Welcome to Offsite DIRT, the podcast committed to uncovering all the insights of the offsite construction industry. Join us as we delve into the realm of offsite construction solutions, modern building methods, high-performance construction, lean manufacturing, and beyond. Your experiences fuel our passion for the industry, fostering collaboration and driving business growth worldwide. So let's get down to the dirt. Here's our host, Audrey Grabesic.
Hello and welcome to Offsite DIRT. I love the opportunity when we can bring individuals here to talk about supply chain. And we have an amazing guest that's a strategic digital supply chain advisor. And Dyci and I actually got to meet at the World of Modular. I was so blown away by the panel that she spoke on with women and just her background of knowledge and experience and how she really views the marketplace. And as we're aware in manufacturing and building, there is so much that has to do with supply chain and really understanding it. What does it really even mean? And then how do we make those applications to the modular offsite community? So first and foremost, Dyci, I'd love to say your last name. I already told you that I'm going to mess it up. So I'm going to have you tell us your last name and then give us a little bit of insight to your background, and then we'll kind of flow into some Q&A.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My last name is pronounced Sfregola. So there are three consonants, R, and the R has to be rolled. So there's a lot going on. So it's fine. And a little bit about my background, just very, very quick. I actually, during college, thought I was going to go into public policy and international affairs. I was really into education development and global development. I started a nonprofit organization where I saw that people were building schools and they were providing school supplies, but the local community didn't actually have any teachers. They didn't have, talking about workforce development, talking about user adoption, everything is connected. But it was very similar in that, cool, we built a school and the kids are ready, but who's going to teach? So we were doing teacher development and teacher training programs. And then I realized, okay, if I'm going to do this and sustain it, you actually need money. So I said, okay, well, let me go find out how to make money and then I'll come back to this. And it's just so interesting that that thought process took me from education and economic development and global development into sales and marketing, because I need to make money before I can help people, which took me to Europe where I was doing PR and marketing, which took me into automotive with Land Rover, Jaguar Land Rover and Mazda. I became a flight attendant. Like I was just doing so much stuff. But in 2016, I met some engineers at Jaguar Land Rover, and they were just telling me about all of the cool things that they were planning to do with cars to notice and identify driver sleepiness, or, if you're going to have some sort of health issue while you're driving, just the different technologies that were really built to make the human experience better. And I said, I want to do that. I want to go into engineer. My dad's an engineer. He'd been trying to tell me to do engineering for a long time, but I was like, no, I want to speak languages and I want to live around the world and do all these other things. So my first degree was liberal arts, which it still is very, very valuable. I mean, I speak Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and English. So it helps me communicate with so many different people, especially in the supply chain space where we're so globally connected. But I went back and I wanted to study electrical engineering. I looked at the course catalog and I said, I don't want to study electrical engineering. Let's do something else. So I landed on industrial engineering because I loved how it was the mix between engineering and applying those principles of critical thinking and, mathematical and scientific thinking to business processes. And how do we just optimize the way we do business better by adopting engineering principles. And that's when I was introduced into supply chain. And I got an internship in Atlanta at a company that was called Barkawi Management Consultants. And they only focused on digital supply chain, so software implementations for manufacturers. I did some big projects with the Clorox company and NCR, Lippert Components, but I also was able to transition to a smaller boutique firm where I got to work with some really cool startups. So like Quip, the toothbrush company, or the Black Tux when they were doing rentals, to really figure out how do you streamline processes within the supply chain, communicate and collaborate with your external partners, to collaborate with your internal, departments, and what are the technologies and the data, the solution architecture that really enables people to do all of that. So that's how I ended up in the supply chain space. And in COVID during 2020, it was the right place at the right time. So I couldn't find a company. I was avoiding the large company feel. Barkawi was acquired by Genpact. So I went to work at a small boutique firm. And after a couple of years, they just, very nicely told me there's nowhere else for you to go from here. There are only so many leadership roles. They're filled. We wish you well. So I went to another company, and then they were acquired by Accenture. And I was like, nope, don't want to do this either. So I, at the time, just couldn't find somewhere where I wanted to work. So I said, okay, I'll do it by myself for a little bit, until I find something steady and stable, then I'll just go out on my own. And I didn't realize how large my network was, because as soon as I announced to people that I was on my own, well, then, we had tons of contracts and things were going on. So one of my clients was a prefab panel manufacturer, and that is how I ended up in this world, through supply chain, digital manufacturing. And then I was introduced to construction and offsite. And it was so interesting to me because I said, why isn't anyone doing any of like the basic supply chain frameworks? They're not executing on these basic fundamentals that you're taught as like a wee little supply chain, student when you're in school. And some other leaders within this space said, well, you need to be talking about it. So that's how I started spreading the good word about digital supply chain in the offsite industry.
I love it. And what a great background. And I think, we look at where we start and we look at these collaborations and the people we connect with, and you are so young and energetic, and being able to have this diversified background, it really gives you a bigger scope, a bigger way to utilize the wisdom that you have and to transcend that into your clients. And we are happy that you're in this space and doing the modular thing and talking offsite and being in that panelized system. I'm interested when you were saying that, what are the basic principles for a company to be considering in the digital supply chain space with technology and in scaling and improving profitability?
Oh my goodness. It's so funny that you asked that, because someone asked me that on LinkedIn a couple days ago. Someone posted, like, these are the supply chain fundamentals that we need to be considering. And someone tagged me and said, well, Dyci, what are your thoughts? And LinkedIn didn't give me enough characters, so I can answer it here. I can answer that question here. So there are a lot of things, but let's pick three. So one thing is sales and operations planning, and that is essentially the idea of aligning your operations execution with the sales and demand plan. And a lot of the companies that I've talked to say, oh, we don't do any forecasting or any demand planning because we're project based. And the response to that is, well, within supply chain, you have made to order supply chains, which are essentially project based. Like you're not really acting on anything until you get that order. That doesn't mean that you don't plan and forecast and think about as much as possible, what are the different scenarios? What do we need to be ready for? And to be having those consistent conversations with customers and with your external suppliers, so that it's not this reactive state of always trying to figure out, oh, well, the order came in. What do we do now? We didn't know the order was going to come in. Who'd have thunk? But you knew an order was going to come in, because that's what you do. You're in business of doing these types of things. So sales and operations planning, I don't see enough of. But not only do I not see enough of it, I don't think that that everyone really understands the value of it or what that even looks like. And there are even different maturity frameworks and different frameworks, not maturity, but just how to do it, that are like Gartner has one.
Like processes, right?
Processes, yes.
Right.
SOPs, Gartner has one, ASCM has one, CSA, and they're all kind of pretty much the same thing, but they have to be different so that every person can put out a different framework, but pick one, adopt it, use it. Something is better than nothing. And then within that is strategic procurement. Strategic procurement and sourcing. And the third one I would say is absolutely network design. Network design, and that goes within risk management. So all of those things are very connected, but they're not all the same thing. So procurement and purchasing and sourcing are not all the same, but a lot of companies make them all the same. And it's sometimes because you have one person or one department that's managing all of the different processes. But it is important to understand that there is the actual process of figuring out the strategy around what are the critical materials? What are the critical services? How are we going to procure these things? Supply relationship management, you have your transactional suppliers, operational suppliers, strategic suppliers. You want to be a lot more connected with your strategic suppliers than you are with transactional suppliers. Maybe your strategic suppliers can help you find your transactional suppliers. So like there's the actual strategy around that. And then there's the execution of sourcing all of those things. Okay, now we're going to go do it. But then once you figure out who those people are, well, then you have purchasing of, okay, here's the contract, here's the invoice, here's the PO, it becomes the sales order. How often are we going to do that? Are we going to do lot for lot? Are we going to make it dynamic? There are all these different ways that you can do it. And it's not just haphazardly, oh, we got the order. Who's the guy, the company that we met at that one thing? Wait, maybe I'll find the business card. Oh, they have a 12-week lead time. Well, we're now going to pass that on to the customer. We've accepted these delays and, long timelines, and it'll be off budget and it'll, go later than expected. But it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to accept those things. We can improve them and provide better value to customer, and also just selfishly make our lives easier. It's easier to just like know what's going to happen than to every single day be fighting an avoidable fire. You can't avoid everything, but that's then also why you have your network design and risk management to where you're identifying, okay, I'm getting a material from my tier 1 supplier, and just ask them, where are you getting your stuff from? And that's the tier 2 supplier. And where are they getting their stuff from? And that's the tier 3 supplier. So that when you start to adopt digital and you want the AI to be monitoring weather events or political events or, labor strikes, you want your AI to be monitoring that so that it can ping you and say like, hey, this just happened. It's going to affect this project. It's going to affect this, container that's supposed to come in. You can't Google alert things that you don't know, but the AI can be looking at all of these different data sources, but you have to tell it where to look. So if you don't know that you have a tier 3 supplier in Brazil that sends to your tier 2 supplier in Mexico, that sends to your tier 1 supplier in Florida, you don't know to look for those types of things. So you have to identify where everything is within your network. Where are you getting stuff from? Where are you getting stuff to? And then what are the risk mitigation strategies around what could happen? Let's just all sit around and figure out what could happen, Well, if that does happen, what do we do? So it becomes more of, okay, flip on plan A switch, flip on plan B switch, and not like, hey, let's have a meeting right now real quick and try to get everyone together and figure out how to fix this. Well, you already kind of know. So when those things happen, it's just execute on whatever plan B was. and it leaves you more mental space and more time to deal with true fires when you really do need to get in the war room and figure out what's happening. So in a very long way, 3 things: sales and operations planning, strategic procurement and sourcing, and supply chain network design. I think if everyone did those 3 things, S&OP is a lot harder than, I said it, it's a thing, but it can also be like herding a lot of cats and getting a lot of people on board. But you don't need to herd a lot of cats and get a lot of people on board to do strategic procurement and to do, network design. That's just a matter of getting the people within your 4 walls and within your organization to say, okay, what does this look like for us? S&OP is a lot more. You got to use some political clout and call some favors in to get that going.
Well, I think it's really wonderful that you're explaining these 3 targets, because not a lot of companies actually strategically put these ideas and these solutions in place. And DC, that's why I think it's so wonderful that not only are we having the dialogue, but you also know the structure, you also know the planning and the questions to ask, and then how to implement it. This is it's been around for a while. We know that we have to start changing the way that we look at our businesses, especially if we're manufacturing, especially if we're in offsite construction, and we're getting materials and we're getting supply in and we're doing procurement and we're doing these organizational things. I guess my question is, how are you bringing this knowledge, this wisdom? Because I'm guessing in my heart, there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of resistance to technology. There's a lot of resistance to change. So how are you able to make people that are hiring you or you're advising to start thinking a little bit differently about a strategic plan when it comes to the digital supply chain?
So it's interesting, because is there a lot of resistance to change? Yes. But I also don't deal with those people. So we're a small team, we're a small company. There's only so much that we can take on. And I've just made it a very intentional point to work with the people who do get it. Not necessarily that they understand supply chain, they don't necessarily understand the technology. Some of the words I say, I mean, I've had, senior leaders that I work with. Some of the people that I end up working with are like the owners, the developers who want to do modular, or they just want to understand how to avoid our project is delayed because of the supply chain. How can we avoid that? And they've told me, I have no idea what you're saying, but I know that this thing is important. So you seem to really know what you're talking about. You have the proven experience. Tell me what I need to do. And, I have a guy that I met at World of Modular, actually, and he was telling me about, he's going to be using some unused capacity at this manufacturer. And I was like, oh, well, did you do this, 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 this? And I was like, I did not, but I did not think to ask that because I don't know these things. So luckily, we're still small enough to be able to really work with the people who are innovating. Now, what I will say that I have found as a challenge is not necessarily the resistance to change as much as the lack of education. So if I talk to, a manufacturer or a retail company that really understands the basics of all the things that I just talked about, it's not me explaining to them what strategic procurement is. It's us together looking at what they're already doing and just finding ways to optimize that. So what I have found is that I'm doing a lot more education than I would normally in another industry. But I will say that I have been met with more welcome than, okay, I don't want to do this. This sounds like it's too much. And I think it is overwhelming. Quite frankly, the first presentation I ever did in this industry, it was like completely silent. No one had any questions. No one had anything to say. But I got really good feedback from the conference, and they're like, oh my goodness, everyone loved that session. I was like, oh, strange, because no one said anything at all. And she said, well, it's probably because people just literally, they didn't know where to go after that. So that's why I started in August of last year. So World of Modular is in March. So in August of last year, I kind of split off the companies, and I have New Gen Architects, which still does the solution architecture consulting for companies that know they want to do something. They have some systems in place. They want to optimize and they want to improve them. So we do that consulting, but we also do, and I really started to double down on this and kind of really push leaders to do this, the training and the end user reskilling and upskilling, because I think that that's a huge barrier right now to achieving ROI. If the end users are not engaged and telling the solution architects and the consultants what will help, we don't always know. Even if you've been in offsite or any industry for decades, every company is different because every team is different. So the end users have to be engaged with sharing what those gaps are. I can kind of think about it. I can give you some ideas, but ultimately I'm not doing the job every day. So you have to have the end users that understand what you're trying to accomplish and at least remotely get it, so they can then be engaged in the process and then want to adopt the technology and help you with the continuous improvement going forward. So we really started to focus on the training for new gen architects. And then with Athena Operations Studio, I personally do like that executive training. So I sit on the phone with the top leaders, the board members, the investors, and I go through that education because it looks different when you're the CEO or the board member or the investor than if you're working the machine or doing the sets, or like if you're the trade contractor, you can't have the same conversation. So I'm trying to tackle both sides through two different companies.
I love that. And I think it's so valuable because if you're not learning and expanding and knowing how to utilize resources, plan, strategically put together the structure, there can be no change and there can be no growth. And ultimately, what you're really trying to do, it sounds like to me, DC, is rescaling, upscaling, creating these programs so that you can improve profitability.
Yes. Reduce waste, improve profitability. And honestly, like it sounds kind of foo-foo cliche, but like make people's lives better. Because at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time in buildings, regardless of what type of building it is. We want the buildings to be built better. We want them to be designed to improve our lives and that we feel good when we enter them. But we also spend a lot of time at work. So we want to enjoy work. And technology takes a lot of the just like out of everything, as well as improved processes. But if you don't really know where to start, like ultimately my vision and my goal is to improve the human experience. And if that is through construction or education or whatever that looks like, that's what I'm trying to do. And it sounds really like, oh, okay, but it is. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I think we need more of that. I think we need to start taking care of our people. I think we need to start leading with our heart and knowing that not everything has to be a push and pull. There can be planning and there can be ease and there can be flow. I think those are the companies that thrive. I think those are the leaders that change the world. And you're obviously part of that. So to me, I think that part of the job is the greatest part of the job. And maybe it's not even the job. Maybe it's the collaboration of making oneness and things to happen in this world to be better. So to me, you speak to my soul, and I'm so happy that we've had this time to share. I'm so happy that you've given us such really specific things to start thinking about. And also, I love that you have two different areas, that you're working with the executive team level, and then you're working in the contractor world, and you're helping individuals to understand and to streamline their digital supply chain and understand there's so much more of it than just purchasing a material and knowing where it comes from. So in close, is there anything else coming up in the next couple of months for DC?
Yes, I have a manuscript due. It is Digital Supply Chain Fundamentals for Construction, working title. The publisher has something else, but that's essentially what is going to be inside. And I'll talk about sales and operations planning and all of the other inventory management, which we didn't talk about, or distribution and transportation and logistics and yard management, which we didn't talk about. So I'll talk about all that in the book. I'll share some case studies, as well as just some tried and true, don't reinvent the wheel kind of things that you can do to improve your supply chain, and just make sure that you're running your projects better and providing better workplaces and better work environments for people. So my manuscript is due at the end of the summer, and then next year we will see it in print and distribution. So you can go to my website, dcmans.com, and sign up for like a waitlist notification, I think is what they're calling it. And by they, I mean like we, but I asked my marketing intern to maybe come up with something better. So
Always
that's coming up.
improving, always improving.
Always
communication,
improving, always
always
improving.
improving. I love that.
Absolutely. So that's the biggest thing that's coming up. So I am going to go dark for a couple of months in May to just kind of like get it done.
We're glad.
But that's
We need
the
that.
that's the
We need
next
that in the
thing.
world. I'm super excited about you sharing that and your knowledge because we need more of it, and we know that. And it's wonderful that you're this human out there that's got this light, that's sharing it and letting other people know that they can actually have a better way of running their business. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great conversation.
It has. And you'll be able to see all of Dyci's information in the show notes. Please make sure to like us, to share us, and to follow us. These are the conversations that really change the way that we build in offsite construction, and certainly bringing a hero like her to the industry is really, it makes the world so much better. So we are certainly happy to have this conversation, give you a little bit more insight. We'll make sure to recap her 3 strategies, and then we'll be looking for her book. It's going to be an exciting time for all of us. I'm Audrey Grabesic. This is Offsite Dirt, and thank you for being here. And that's the dirt on Offsite Dirt.